Who knows when to start with a Mario video, but a place to start might be the mountain at Cool Cool Mountain, a fairly freezy place. Mario awakes up there at the top. That's his entry place from the portal painting. It also happens to be where a baby has appeared. A baby is being looked for by his mother, but the mother is not there. The mother, in fact, is down below, under, at the lower reaches of the hill. Both are on opposite sides of the mountain, top side and bottom. What Mario does then is take the baby down to the bottom to reach the mother. I'm intrigued by the symbolic meaning of this. The baby is up in the sky, up in the top levels of the mountain, so near the clouds, one could say. The mother is at the bottom. The mother is bigger, an older being. The baby has been born recently, we can suppose. So, time flows weirdly downwards down the mountain. The baby is born and descends down towards a grown adult mother, the land of mature people. Mario plays a role in taking this baby down to his mother as a messenger. This mountain is descendable in many ways, not just as a slope on the outer side of the mountain, but as an inner slope, a slope that descends down the inside of the mountain, as if the mountain is hollow and comprises a huge spiral-like slide down. The outer slide is also a spiral-like from top to bottom. Two slide systems are present and perhaps form the main body of the mountain. Mario is up at the top like the baby. Then Mario grows and descends down from idealized idea up in the clouds to concrete material incarnation on the earth. Perhaps Mario's story has always been one of growth from baby to adult, since even his energy levels are represented by him becoming a tiny Mario, akin to a child, and becoming an adult again when a mushroom is consumed in the early 2D games. So Mario includes within him a baby, an inner baby that can grow when conditions are good to become a full adult, a realized form of what his inner baby sort of is. Sliding is an action of letting oneself fully go, letting go and descending on a slide. It might not be a surprise that growth happens when this occurs, since one lets things go and time passes on, making the person mature. It can always be undone though, since one false move and you're a baby again, Mario shows. So this time is not a time that moves in a literal, linear way. Not simply a passage from born to dead, but a great spiral that moves us beyond ourselves as long as we discover it and let go. Where does Mario go from there? Well, he starts exploring different cities, like Wet Dry World. Wet Dry World goes up and down. First there's a wet bit, water, and then it all dries up. All this makes me think that when I played this game, I used to find it, as a kid, depressing, to be honest. It's grey concrete blocks, all in a sort of reduced space, a very small space, surrounded by walls. Grey concrete and the sort of shapes that one would have found often in car parks or supermarket trolley areas or ugly public parks with lots of grey bits. It's sort of look that represents, as a kid, places I wouldn't have wanted. I mean, all levels, all Super Mario 64 is generally built of grey concrete, bricks, ramps, metal fencing, tiled floors and walls, etc. What's fascinating to me is that as a kid I wouldn't have wanted to be in those areas. I didn't particularly like grey bricks, and yet I wanted to play the game. Here is a promotional image for the game Link's Awakening on the Game Boy, a Zelda game. I feel like talking about this. There is a baby on top of the mountain, an egg. This egg will be born and be a newborn, so that's why I say it. A new life is atop the mountain, perhaps that is the symbol. However, it's also a volcano. So it feels as if a new life is ejecting from the volcano. That may be why it's on the top, because the top is where all this life comes out. It sprouts like a fountain. Yoshiaki Koizumi was involved in Mario 64 as an artist and then was the writer of Link's Awakening. He then directed Mario Sunshine, where a volcano atop a giant head of a fish is also a central element. Here a father and a son are enjoying a holiday. The child has been the main element across the game, being Mario's antagonist. The fish, however, I'm not sure why it's here. I'm not so sure. In Link's Awakening, a fish is a creature who can swim in the depths of the water, and also a windfish, one who can fly up in the sky. In Mario Sunshine, the highest peak of the island, the volcano, is on top of the fish, who is the creature who swims in the depths. In Mario 64, we might get a similar theme going on, with a penguin being both a bird with wings, and thus evoking flying up the sky, and also a being who swims regularly and lives in close connection to the waters. How does this connect to the child and parent duality? Well, if the parent is shown below and the child is up above, the child might be the sky, and the parents the waters, the depths below, of course. If the sky above is sky, so spirit, air, then the waters or depths are material, the ground below. I think this, again, is one of the things I found jarring about Mario 64. The game evokes spiritual worlds, but these spiritual places are built of the most material-looking stuff possible. Even Rainbow Ride, a ride in the sky, is a bunch of concrete in the sky. Concrete, hard matter, not even soft dirt which you could crumble away with your hands. That's perhaps what upset me as a child. This way that matter in Super Mario 64 is concrete. It's immutable. You can't shape it like putty, like soft clay or sands. It's a world that's been pre-established for you, with a certain intent or life to it. But you can't do anything about it, really. It's a life to it because it moves, it rotates, it shifts up and down, it goes up and down, it's moving and follows strict patterns. Blocks move in pairs or in zigzag waves. There's a clear intentionality or order to all, but it's an order that seems distant from Mario, or Mario can't really interact with it in a living way. It reminds me of concrete construction in cities. And what I don't like about it is that it reminds me of the way in which a city closes in on your freedom. You want to go to the magical kingdom, but instead you get a grey ramp. The grey ramp also is a piece of architecture that feels very functional, especially as a kid. I think it did to me. It feels like the opposite of playing. A concrete ramp and a concrete pillar seem to have very specific goals which they're trying to attain. The most immediate and direct way being the strongest they need to be, or the smoothest ramp it needs to be, etc. The materials used as centered around attaining a certain goal of structures. No part of it is, or seems to be, intended to be a pleasant environment for the people walking by there. Of course, this was my impression as a kid, and it's a subjective one, but it felt jarring to me that this game, Mario 64, was evoking the sorts of boring, utility-centric structures that didn't invite play in me as a kid, and instead applying them to this clearly spiritual and magic other world. While I'm jumping from topic to topic like a Mario, let me talk about this too. Here we see baby penguin and parent penguin. There on Mario's feet, or by the feet. The hot island, the desert, is instead by Mario's chest, the heart area. So, a hot desert is sort of the opposite of a cold, icy, snowy island, and both are placed sort of oppositionally in this image. One, the hot desert, is on Mario's chest, which is the heart, which we often say is a place of passion and heat and hotness, whereas the cold, icy place is on the lowest part of Mario, the feet, the place closest to the ground. The hot island is not just hot because of a desert, it's also hot because it has a bob-omb on it, so it doubles its hotness by having sun heat and the heat of gunpowder and explosion. Quick detail before I forget. This hot area is Shifting Sandland, Area 8 in the game. In Japanese, roughly translates to hot desert, so it's a hot area. This is in the center of the game, since there are 7 areas before it and 7 after it. So, in this quick reading of the game, I'd say it sort of could, maybe, perhaps, be considered the absolute center of the game, as a whole. Why not? What's cool is that this area sits on Mario's chest, his heart. So, could I say that the heart is the center of the body? I could, but I'm not sure if it would make any sense. Okay, look at it this way. Mario is placed in a cross. His body is splayed out as a plus sign, his arms outstretched, and his legs too. So the chest could be said to be maybe the point at which this cross joins pathways. Does this make sense? I'm interested too in that Shifting Sandland has two hands as a boss, so this central chest area might be, if you'll indulge me, the place from which Mario's two hands, his two arms, spread, from the chest and shoulder area out into the sides. Perhaps Shifting Sandland is a place where the player comes into contact with an elemental area of Mario's body, the hands which we are using to interact with the game and to become Mario himself, since our controller is our pathway to emulating Mario and stepping in his shoes. Why this is the hottest area, though, I would have no idea. Let's wait, maybe it'll say. The cool thing is that Mario is stepping on a cold area and has his chest or upper body on the hot area, so his upper shirt, which is red, is a color of heat and fire and hotness, and is associated to the chest and the hot desert, right? His legs, which are in blue clothes, blue the color of cold and icy, on the land that is snow and icy. Okay? Bottom part. Blue trousers are on icy water, the waters far away from the sun, far away from the fiery top of the mountain, the top of the sky, the heat. And this heat is on the top, on the chest area, which is linked with his head, balanced up there. So the top bit and the bottom, the red and the blue, are balanced on each pole of Mario's self, with the hat, or the palace, acting as a balancing act. Even this palace is balanced between a star, a hot celestial ball of fire, and a ghost, a cold, dead thing. It further associates cold with death and fire with life, which is interesting in light of the child-parent dynamic. Parent is old, near to death, child is young, born, close to life, as it springs out from death. In the center of it is a mushroom surrounded by a daisy circle of 5 flowers. This is an interesting image because, okay, there are a few reasons. A ring of daisies is known sometimes as an elf ring or a fairy ring, caused by the dancing of fairies, as far as I know. This word is linked to the same word fairy ring, which is used for mushrooms, naturally occurring circles of mushrooms, also associated to fairies and witchcraft. So as far as I can see, fairy rings are said to be formed by daisies and mushrooms. So, here we have a mushroom inside of a fairy ring. Okay, so what? But, however, Daisy, Princess Daisy, is also Princess Toadstool. Sure, I think officially they're meant to be 2 different characters, but in my opinion it feels more like 2 incarnations of the same archetype within the Mario games. A princess who gets captured by Bowser. I'm not sure of the history here, but perhaps they just named her differently for the Game Boy game, for whatever creative decisions. Of course, this also assumes that the Sphinx character in Super Mario Land is Bowser, which, you know, you can choose to believe me on this if you want. But anyway, you could also say that even if she's a different person, there are 2 princesses in this saga. One is named after daisies, the flower, and the other is named after a mushroom, Toadstool. So both names are the names of fairy rings. Okay, sure. Now this Goomba is surrounded by 5 daisies, 5 flowers. In her painting, in her stained glass painting, Toadstool, a mushroom too, is surrounded by 5 flowers. These flowers are 5-petaled, creating a sort of vortex, a recursion loop of fractal stuff, which makes the number of flowers be contained in the number of flowers, and again in the number of flowers. So entering a fairy ring is said by some traditions to lead to fairy land, but is also greatly dangerous. Significantly, then, it's an entrance, right? The fairy ring is an entrance, and here this ring is at the entrance to the palace. Now, the cold and hot islands are set apart horizontally, but the top island is set from the lower island too, vertically, an island that is completely empty. Some clouds float by it, like they float by the castle, right? The clouds. So this visual motif of the clouds also connecting the islands. And see, if the bottom, so here, if the bottom island is empty, is the castle in resonance with that? Well, in some way, yes, the castle is indeed empty, right? Bowser tells us that no one's home. His disembodied voice warns it. So maybe there's something there. But anyway, of course. So, return to the fairy ring issue for a moment. Daisy chains are also a sort of... Okay, so if the flowers around Daisy in the glass window are said by myself to be fractaled, daisies within, okay, then it also represents somehow the idea of a daisy chain. Daisies linked to daisies in an eternal loop. Again, sort of evoking eternity, or some kind of entrance to eternity, or the eternal. I'd also like to add that, of course, this whole concept of the daisy chain, etc., seems to be more common in the kind of fairy tales of, like, medieval Europe and stuff like that, which, on the face of it, would have nothing to do with Japan, where this game, right, exists. But at the same time, maybe I could argue that it's, on the one hand, maybe it's because this game is evoking the themes of European castles and stuff like that. The kind of themes that those sorts of fairy tales obviously would have brought within them, that it's sort of using all that material. And that material obviously then became really famous and was spread to the rest of the world. So in some way, maybe this is just the effect of the influence of famous myths spreading into the collective in some weird way. The daisy flower, from what I've seen, is also seen as mystical in Japanese, like, fairy tales, so I imagine that it might also be seen as mystical in the fairy tales of other places in the world. I imagine so, but I don't know. But, so, yeah, blah, 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 all this is my reading, but, okay, in that case, it would make sense that Bowser says Peach's castle is empty, right? It's empty because it's empty. It's eternity. It's empty. It's the void, right? The island below Mario, however, sort of associates to his crotch. So its emptiness is very interesting. Of course, first thought is castration or some sort of blockage or emptiness regarding libido or enjoyment. Playing, fun, orgasm, and enjoyment perhaps being blocked. Mario is, after all, flying in the sky. This whole planet of materialities, hot temperatures in the desert, cold temperatures in the icy world, they are all somehow transcending him. He's not standing on the ground. All these are somehow transcending him. He's not standing on the ground, right? This daisy chain is worn as a crown sometimes, which is what Mario is wearing, a magical crown. It seems to be what is allowing him to fly. Otherwise, nothing seems to indicate it. So, the crown or cap is what allows him to fly. On the other hand, Peach is also wearing a crown in the center of the crown of flowers. Let's not forget too that this game, Mario 64, is then going to transform into Super Mario Sunshine. The hottest thing in our world, the creator of heat itself, is where Mario flies to the star at the center of our galaxy. Then, after Mario Sunshine, he in fact flies up into the stars, into the galaxy, getting even closer to the stars. After all, Mario collects stars. In Mario 64 he collects them, so stars are something he values or that he wants. He gets closer to them in Sunshine, gathering their heat-delivering property, and then goes up into space. So one could say Mario is on a trajectory towards stars and then towards heat, towards hotness. So desert, the shifting sandland, might be the center of Mario 64 because it's the heat, the heart, the place where Mario is heading to, stars and sun, light and heat itself, it's fire. That's why there's a volcano in the center of the island, or on the head. In a sense, that's what we're doing, isn't it? We're playing with fire. We're awakening the fire in the game. Electricity coursing through the game console, like fire and lightning. And then lighting up a screen with light to cast an image we can see. Fire is the place at which we meet the game, the boundary between us and the Mario. It's also how our hands come alive with the fire of the desert. The tomb is where our hands are, dead in the tomb, but something revitalizes them. The game is giving our hands a training in coordinating our will with our functions, our motor. It's like our spirit, the spirit that wants to do this and do that, is speaking through our hands. Perhaps by playing a video game, you start to build a relationship between what you can do and what you want to do that serves you in life in other areas. So maybe video games are a sacred training or revitalization of ourselves. Isn't that nice? The volcano spits out fire that allows us to see what was hidden. The daisy flowers come from the Asteraceae, which derived from aster, the Greek word for star, same as astral, etc. The daisy is a star surrounded by its shining rays around it. In a sense, daisies also do this heliotropism thing. They follow the sun as it moves through the sky and open up with day, close at night. They circle around the sun, following it from every angle. It makes me think that whatever finds itself at the center of the daisy circle, surrounded by the daisy and looked at from its every angle, must stand in the place of sun itself. Princess Peach, surrounded by these flowers, crowned by them, might be the sun itself. Rosalina, the character from Mario Galaxy, then serves this strange role of being like a star being, a magic person with a name derived from Rosetta Orbit. And early designs had considered her to be a relative of Princess Peach. So we have a sort of evolution of the symbolism here, as if the game, the Mario games, was starting to require a sort of Peach character who was magical, more explicitly magical and more explicitly sun-like, star-like, or otherworldly, without having to compromise the existence of Peach as she was known. Yoshiaki Koizumi directed Galaxy as well. Bowser is a big water turtle. Whereas Mario's relationship to matter is screwed in Super Mario 64, in my opinion, it's perfect in Mario Land, the Mario Land games.